Tecumseh Sherman is my name. My father named me after the Indian chief Tecumseh because he admired him, but I go by William because that's what I was baptized as. When I was young, my father died, and he left behind a massive debt for my mother to shoulder. She couldn't support her 11 children, so I went to live with the Ewings. I was about 9 years old. My foster father, Thomas Ewing, was elected to the Senate shortly after he took me in. He was under the Whig ticket and was a strong Unionist. His views are what shaped my own. The Union is of the utmost importance, and I believe the United States should do whatever is necessary to keep it together. When I was 16, I was accepted to the United States Military Academy at West Point. Thomas Ewing helped pull some strings to get me in, but as it turned out, I proved to be a good choice. My days at West Point were rigorous. I barely had any time for my studies, as the days consisted of drilling and classes. By my second year there, only 43 students in my class remained. I was also a bit of a troublemaker. I liked to pull pranks, and I received about 150 demerits a year. 200 will get a cadet expelled. These were for trivial matters, of course, like uniforms with dirt on them and other such things. However, despite my demerits, I graduated 6th in my class. My first assignment after I graduated was in the Seminole War. I started at Fort Columbus in Florida, but I didn't stay there long. I was transferred to Fort Pierce, where I stayed for a while. My troops and I grew tired of the long, dragged-out war, but I made sure everyone stayed in line and we all did our drills. I was promoted to first lieutenant in 1841 and transferred again. I served at Fort Picolata, Fort Morgan, and Fort Moultrie. I spent this time attending parties, playing cards, being social, and other activities. At Moultrie, I was sent on missions all over the south of this great nation. Rumors of the Mexican War started, and when our troops in Texas were attacked, the United States declared war on Mexico. After a short time training recruits in Pennsylvania, I was finally sent to California, at that time, part of Mexico. In California, I served under Colonel Richard Mason, who became somewhat of my teacher. He showed me how to run an army in a foreign land, and his tactics were brilliant. It made up for all the paperwork I had to do. I spent much of my time bent over a desk. Mason was transferred out of California after the Mexican War ended and the gold rush began. He was promoted to brigadier general, and they completely overlooked me, something I'm still bitter about. I tried to resign, but my letter wasn't sent. However, I was promoted and given more free time, where I built up my savings working as a surveyor. I was then sent back to the east at the end of the year. When I landed in New York, I met with General Winfield Scott, who had me report to President Zachary Taylor about the situations in California. I stayed in Washington, D.C. for a while, getting to know the politicians and listening to the political problems of the time. I applied for a position in the subsistence department and was finally given it. I moved around over the next few years and eventually ended up running the Louisiana Seminary, where I trained cadets. The cadets ended up being quite rebellious, and I hope I put out a few good soldiers in my time there. All eyes turned to South Carolina when they started talking of secession. That is when I left the Deep South, and I haven't been back since. Most of the country, both North and South, believe this will be a short conflict, but I see this as something different. This will be a long, drawn-out conflict, lasting close to 30 years, I presume. The Union must be preserved, and this conflict with the South is simply a test on the just and fair ideals of democracy. However, I do not yet know what my role will be. Will I be a simple businessman, or will I join the army again? I sincerely hope this conflict will not result in violence, but if it does, will I be on the front lines again, fighting for our great country? In complete honesty, I do not know. William T. Sherman.